He laughed when his father mocked my dead mother. That was the moment I knew. I couldn't marry him. Not because I was angry. Not because I wanted to make a scene. I didn't even stand up right away. I just sat there, frozen, while my heart cracked open in silence. My name is Sloane Merrick. I'm 33 years old, and what I'm about to tell you is the story of how one polite, hollow laugh ended an entire future I had convinced myself I wanted. I didn't scream. I didn't throw my drink. I didn't storm out. What I did was colder, quieter, and 1,000 times more permanent. Because when someone shows you who they are, not in a fight, but in the way they stay silent when you need them loud, you don't unsee it. You don't unfeel it. Especially when it's about the woman who gave up everything to raise you alone. If someone laughed while the person you loved most in the world was turned into a punchline, would you still marry into that silence? I met Evan Langford 6 years ago at a gallery opening in Beacon Hill. I was there to shoot the event. Low pay, decent exposure, and free wine if I kept my badge on. He was there with a group from his firm, all tailored suits and quiet laughter. He noticed one of my black and white prints, complimented the lighting, and said it reminded him of something his mother would hang in their summer house on the Cape. I smiled, flattered, and thought, so this is what it feels like to be seen by someone like him. We had coffee a week later, then drinks, then weekends in Vermont, shared playlists, inside jokes, recipes. It wasn't fast, but it was easy. He showed up. He remembered things. He was polished in all the right ways. Patient, observant, a little too careful maybe, but steady. When I told my mom about him, she gave me that soft smile she reserved for things she was cautiously happy about. He sounds like he's got a good heart, she said. Let's just hope he's got the strength to match it. At the time, I didn't understand what she meant. Now I do. The first time Evan met my mother, Celeste, it was a Sunday. We had takeout Thai on the balcony of our third-floor walk-up in Dorchester. My mom wore a blue cardigan with a hole in the sleeve and served iced tea in mason jars. Evan brought peonies and used his napkin every time he took a bite. She asked about his work, his parents, what he read for fun. He answered with ease and charm. After he left, she watched me fuss with the empty containers and said, "He's impressive, but I hope he sees the world the way you do." "He's just formal," I said. "He's not used to us." She didn't push. She never did. But I saw something flicker behind her eyes. A weight she didn't want to hand me. I ignored it. We moved in together a year later, got a dog. I started getting steadier work, editorials, weddings, even a small gallery show of my own. He got promoted. Life looked like it was supposed to look. We talked about travel, home ownership, starting a family. Then my mom got sick. It started with fatigue, then a cough. Then came the scans, the hospital visits, the diagnosis. Stage 4. I dropped everything. Work, weekends, photography. I moved into her apartment to take care of her. Evan helped. At first. He drove me to appointments when he could, brought takeout, sat on his phone while I rubbed lotion into her fragile skin. I told myself that was enough, that him being there physically, even if not emotionally, was a form of love. The night she passed, I curled up in his arms and sobbed into his chest. I remember thinking, thank God I'm not alone. But even then, I felt the space between us, something cold and quiet that didn't shrink, no matter how hard I tried to pretend it wasn't there. A year after she died, Evan proposed. It was on a rooftop, under string lights, with a ring that probably cost more than my mom made in a year. I said yes. Through tears. Through the ache in my chest I couldn't name. I told myself it was just grief, just missing her, just nerves. But the truth? I think part of me already knew. Wedding planning should have been joyful. I wanted it to be. I tried. I bought a new notebook, bookmarked ideas, made vision boards. But every time I suggested something that reminded me of my mom, it was met with resistance so subtle, it felt like my grief was the one being impolite. It started with little things. I mentioned placing a framed photo of my mother on the memory table. Evan tilted his head, smiled that thin, diplomatic smile, and said, "Let's not make the day too sad, babe. She wouldn't want that." When I brought up including a line about her in my vows, just one sentence, one quiet thread that tethered her to this day, he didn't even look up from his laptop. Vows are meant to look forward, he said, not backward. His parents were worse. Margaret Langford, his mother, had a binder full of classic floral arrangements, venues, fonts. When I suggested adding a few calla lilies, my mom's favorite, she barely looked up before saying, "Callas are a bit somber. Let's keep it light, darling." Daniel, his father, called me sentimental like it was a flaw. "Big heart, Sloane," he said once. "Just don't let it hijack the ceremony." They said it all with smiles, with polite tones, and Evan never disagreed. When I told him it hurt, that I felt like they were erasing her, he said, "They're just being themselves. They mean well." But I wasn't asking them to mean well. I was asking them to see me, to understand that my mother wasn't just someone I loved. She was the reason I became the kind of woman Evan claimed to love. The silence started small, like hairline fractures in a pane of glass. A skipped detail, a suggestion brushed aside. But the more I tried to fold pieces of my mother into the ceremony, the more invisible I became in my own wedding. We had a tasting event one night. The wine flowed freely. Daniel swirled his glass and said to me, "You know, most men would be overwhelmed by how attached you still are to your mother." I blinked. She'd been dead for 2 years. Evan just looked away. Later in the car, I asked him, "Why didn't you say anything when your dad said that?" He kept his eyes on the road. "I didn't want to make a scene." "You didn't want to defend me," I corrected. He didn't answer. And that silence? That was the moment I stopped believing this wedding was about us. Every interaction chipped away at something soft in me. Margaret repeatedly mispronounced my last name, even after I corrected her more than once. Daniel dismissed my photography business as a charming little hustle. Neither of them ever asked how I was doing or what my mother was like, but they expected me to be grateful, to smile through it all, to be easy. And Evan, he expected that too. Every time I brought it up, he said the same thing. "Focus on us, Sloane." But how could I? When us included the people who taught him how to stay silent while others shrink you. At a planning dinner, I suggested changing the centerpieces to lavender and cream, my mother's favorite colors. Margaret looked at me like I'd suggested paper plates and said, "Let's not make this feel like a memorial service." That night, I stood in the kitchen alone, hands flat on the countertop, just breathing. I wasn't crying, I wasn't angry. I was hollow. My grief had stopped aching. It had turned to something sharper, cold and still. I realized I wasn't just losing her all over again. I was losing myself. The rehearsal dinner was held at the Monarch Room, an exclusive venue with velvet chairs, a glass ceiling, and walls so pristine they felt hostile. Margaret called it understated elegance. I thought it looked like a hotel lobby trying too hard. I wore a soft lavender dress. It wasn't flashy or designer, but it was the one my mom had once admired when we went window shopping, and I had saved it for this night. I dabbed on her favorite perfume, just behind the ears, and walked in trying to breathe like she had taught me. Steady, measured, even when everything inside me felt tight. The room was full of strangers in tailored suits and high heels. On my side, there were 5. My dad, my cousin Noelle, and 2 of my mother's closest friends. The other 40 seats were filled with people I didn't know. Evan's extended family, his parents' friends, business contacts, country club acquaintances. I smiled. I nodded. I swallowed champagne like it was medicine. Dinner passed in a blur of clinking cutlery and polite laughter. Margaret floated between tables like a queen bee, adjusting flowers and brushing cheeks. Evan looked relaxed, practiced. I watched him from across the room and tried to remember the version of him I once believed in. Then came the toasts. Margaret spoke first, tapping her glass with a butter knife. "Thank you all for coming," she said, her voice dripping with polished affection. "It means the world to us to celebrate Evan and Sloane, our beautiful couple." She praised Evan's accomplishments, then added with a little smirk, "When Evan first brought Sloane home, I didn't quite know what to make of her. Artistic, independent, very Expressive. Laughter from a few tables. But I've come to appreciate her free spirit. She's taught Evan patience, that's for sure. More laughter. I smiled, tight and shallow. Then Daniel stood up. I've watched my son become a man who makes bold decisions, and choosing Sloane, well, that might have been his boldest yet. Chuckles rippled through the room. He held his glass high. But let's talk about family, because that's what tonight's really about. Two families becoming one. He paused, looked straight at me. Now Sloane comes from a spirited background. Her mother, Celeste, was one of a kind, very involved, always had a suggestion or two. He let it hang there, smiling like he'd just told a charming joke. Margaret chimed in. Oh, she definitely had opinions. Daniel added, even when we didn't ask for them. But she was generous, I'll give her that. Helped us out quite a bit, sometimes a little too much if you ask me. And then he winked. The room laughed. I didn't. My mouth dried out. My hand shook around the stem of my glass. I looked at Evan. He was smiling. And then he laughed, softly. But he laughed. That was my mother they were talking about. The woman who worked 3 jobs to raise me. The woman who co-signed the loan that saved Daniel's restaurant. Who organized their books, bought them a new oven when theirs broke down. The woman who helped pay for Evan's brother's final semester of college. They turned her into a punchline. Daniel finished with, let's just hope Sloane doesn't inherit too much of that enthusiasm. We wouldn't want her meddling too much, now would we? That was it. I set my glass down. My chair scraped against the floor as I stood. The sound was louder than anything else that night. The room froze, mid-bite, mid-laugh, mid-sip. Margaret blinked. Everything all right, dear? Evan reached for my wrist. Sloane? I stepped forward. My voice shook, but I didn't lower it. Are you serious right now? Daniel raised an eyebrow. Excuse me? You stood here in front of your friends and your family and mocked the woman who made this wedding possible. The woman who helped you when you had nothing. And you think that's funny? Margaret laughed nervously. Oh, come now, it was just a little humor. No, it was disrespect. I turned to Evan. And you laughed. His face drained of color. I didn't mean to. You didn't mean to embarrass me, or you didn't mean for me to see you clearly. Silence. My dad's fists were clenched in his lap. Noelle looked like she wanted to scream. My mother's best friend was wiping her eyes. I turned to the Langfords. I loved your son. I was ready to be part of this family. But if this is how you treat the dead, I can't imagine how you treat the living. I turned to Evan. We're done. And I walked out. The cold night air hit my face like truth. It was the first breath I'd taken in months that didn't feel filtered. But I wasn't finished. Not yet. The morning after the rehearsal dinner, I moved like a ghost through my apartment. The tea I made sat untouched. My phone buzzed every few minutes, messages, missed calls, but I didn't answer. I didn't want comfort. I wanted quiet. Eventually, I opened the small wooden keepsake box on my dresser. My mother had carved tiny wildflowers into the lid back when her hands were still steady. Inside were the things I had left of her. A Polaroid of us in front of the laundromat, her Sunday earrings, a church bulletin with her handwriting. But the locket wasn't there. I checked again, dug through everything, checked under the photo, under the earrings, nothing. I tore through drawers, pockets, even the couch cushions. Only one person had been here recently, Evan. He'd stopped by to drop off my wedding shoes. He'd asked to use the bathroom. I had said yes without thinking. I picked up my phone and texted, "Did you take the locket from my mom's box?" 10 minutes later, he replied, "What are you talking about?" I didn't play along. It's gone. You were the last one here. This time, he waited longer before replying. I borrowed it. I just wanted to feel close to you. I was going to give it back. Borrowed. I called him. He answered quickly, voice shaky. Sloane, I didn't steal it. I meant to... You opened a box that wasn't yours. You took something sacred. I panicked after last night. I thought maybe... If I had something of hers, I'd understand you better. I laughed, cold, flat. You let them mock her. You laughed too, and now you think touching a locket fixes it? He went silent, then said, It's at my parents' house. I didn't want to lose it. Of course. I didn't tell him I was coming. I just drove. When I arrived, Margaret opened the door. Her expression said everything. Regret, shame, maybe fear. I didn't wait. Where is it? She blinked. The locket? Yes. Richard's voice rang out behind her. Just give it to her. Moments later, Evan came down the stairs. He held the locket between two fingers like it meant nothing. He handed it to me. I didn't mean to hurt you. You didn't mean to protect me either. I opened the locket. One side held my grandmother's photo. The other side, still blank. The empty space was exactly where I had left it. You loved the version of me that never made waves, but when I needed you to stand up for me, for her, you disappeared. I was scared, he whispered. You could have said sorry. You could have respected something for once. He didn't answer. Behind him, Margaret and Richard stood in that familiar, uncomfortable stillness. I turned and walked out. No shouting, no tears, just truth. The days after I ended it passed like fog, soft at the edges, but heavy. I didn't respond to the messages. Evan called twice, then he stopped. Margaret sent one cold email titled, Regretful Circumstances. I deleted it before finishing the second sentence. I wasn't ready to talk about it, not with them, not even with the friends who meant well. Instead, I walked. Every morning, I put on my sneakers and followed the same route my mom used to take on Sundays. Past the bakery with the cracked window. Around the corner with the yellow house she always said looked like a butter cookie. Down to the park bench where she used to sit with her thermos and breathe. One morning, I brought the locket. I sat where she used to sit, the spring sun warming my back, and turned the locket over in my hands. The gold caught the light, soft and steady. I opened it. My grandmother's face smiled calmly from one side. The other side, the space my mother said was, for when you know, was still blank. But for the first time, it didn't feel like something was missing. It felt like space, like possibility, like choice. I closed the locket, held it in my palm, and whispered, not into the air, but into the quiet between us. I walked away, Mom. I didn't stay small. I chose your voice. I chose mine. There was no thunderclap, no wind shift. But I swear, in that moment, the light changed. I went home, made tea the way she liked it, chamomile with honey and a twist of lemon, and poured it into her old chipped mug, the one with the crack she never bothered to fix. Let it show, she used to say. That's how people know it survived. The wedding dress was boxed and returned. The venue issued a partial refund. The countdown app on my phone stayed frozen on the rehearsal dinner date until I deleted it. People whispered. I saw it in their eyes, their cautious texts. You okay? What really happened? I didn't owe anyone an explanation. What mattered was what I said when I stood in that room, when I looked at the people who laughed at my grief and walked away. I hadn't just left a man. I had stood up for the woman who raised me when no one else would. I had said, she mattered, her love, her memory, her story. And in doing that, I had finally told myself, so do you. Looking back now, I think part of me always knew. Evan didn't have the strength to hold space for all of me. He loved the curated version, the smiling one, the quiet one, the woman who didn't ask his family to bend. But my mother didn't raise me to be palatable. She raised me to be whole, to know that love without respect is not love. I don't regret saying yes to Evan, but I'm proud I had the strength to say no too. Because sometimes the most powerful yes you can give is the one you whisper to yourself when no one else is listening. If someone ever asks you to erase the person who made you who you are, walk away. And if someone laughs at your grief, remember, silence isn't neutral. It's complicity. You deserve more than that. You are not too much. You are not too sensitive. You are not alone. You are sacred. And you are enough.